Ladies and gentlemen, after looking at all the data for over 20 years, it's now official. We are in a stalled century. The purpose of this presentation is not to offer an explanation for stalled century. There are many possibilities to discuss at another time. If I outlined all the theoretical or potentially metaphysical reasons for the stalled century, some guy in Duluth who stumbled upon this video would quickly declare me insane. Then he would return to like the 52nd season of The Simpsons and think that's completely normal. For the girl in a Bakersfield slum who clicked on this by mistake, missing her intended link, which was a cat video, I'll have to keep the conspiracy to an absolute minimum. Now, what does stalled century mean? It means there seems to be something wrong with this timeline that we're in after the turn of the century. Well, what exactly does that mean? I don't know. But all I can do is point out to you overwhelming evidence that we're in some weird timeline that it has no other description than stalled century. Here comes the evidence. We'll ponder the reason for it at some other time. But the evidence at this point is irrefutable. There's too much. It all runs the same way. Things are not progressing or moving forward as they should in all areas of culture and society that are not associated with the word tech or not associated with the word smart or smart device. Today, your refrigerator can order milk for you. It can tell a joke to your suicidal daughter if it detects her mood in the morning. That's a form of technology, and that's smart. All that's going forward as it's expected to. But in all other areas of society and culture where things should progress and make life easier, etc., using the adjective stalled is being kind. Quite frankly, it's all going to shit, and it's not natural. In this stalled century, political leaders devolve into further and further states of buffoonery and unlikability. The trend is so universal, it's not natural. Nancy Pelosi coming around the mountain again like a demonic carousel of Lucifers over and over again. Here she comes, majority leader, minority leader. You can't get rid of the ghoul. This is not natural. It's not possible in a normal world for an unlikable ghoul to keep coming around the Lucifer carousel over and over again. Sure, any one example like that can be explained away by the normie with the usual suspects of excuses brought forth by people who want to hold on to the notion that there's nothing wrong with the world, nothing's changed. The excuse makers parrot the same script over and over again. Oh, modern society is complex. People are doing the best that they can, Matt. It's the same script, same excuses over and over. We have too much data now after 20 years. It's not 2004 anymore. We got to sense something was severely wrong. These script runners, the excuse makers, will do anything to defend the norm. If someone was sitting on a pot and a devil head rose up between their legs as they were reaching for a fold, they would have a way to explain it away. These people are in love with the norm, and they're almost hypnotized or put on the frequency to defend the norm. What was that noise in there, hon? I heard something. Oh, it's okay. It's okay, hon. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a devil head rise up between my legs. I was about to wife, but no, what? No, it's okay. It's as it should be. Let's continue with the topic of politics. Endless gaffes, endless putting their foot in their mouth, endless embarrassing situations, endless pathetic leaders taking a podium. Donald Trump saying, oh, I grabbed her pee, and Joe Biden coming to a podium saying, if you vote Republican, he said it to a mostly black audience, they all gonna put you back in chains, he said. Boris Johnson, look at that buffoon, the assistant ski instructor up in Canada, continual embarrassments that keep putting their foot in their mouth like Macron. How do they pass this off as normal to the people around us that can't see it? Now, or with all this ridiculousness and buffoonery in politics, we're all expected to believe that there's no brilliant university chancellor out there somewhere for the Democrats, or no brilliant scientist or business entrepreneur for the Republicans who can actually step up to a podium and be liked. That just can't exist. See, the fact that it should be anybody, you could put any eighth grader as the campaign manager for any leading Republican or Democrat. They could go in one day, maybe just hanging signs up at the mall. They could find somebody likable. The fact that that's never put forth gives reality away, but let's just keep it to stalled century. It gives that away. If the world were real, these unlikable political dolts who keep embarrassing even their own parties, it would be like a once-in-a-century exception that you'd have somebody as ridiculous as Boris Johnson or something. It would just come up every once in a while if the world were real. It wouldn't become the norm across every segment, across every country. And it's such the norm that people are become habituated to it. They don't even realize what's happened. They just think, well, the next president has to be a buffoon. It has to be that way. Well, why does it have to be that way? It would be an exception picking from a pool of 300 million potential candidates. JFK types would be the norm. The Donald Trumps or the assistant ski instructors would be the exception. See, it's not that hard. The clown show of politics can't be explained away with the usual suspects of excuses any longer. No matter how strange you allow your theory to be in terms of explaining this phenomenon, it's best said that something is going on here, something kind of beyond perception. Good music is dead in this wonderful stalled century of Oz. Now, one metric in the past of making a band great was, one of many, was can they sell out a big, huge stadium? You know, can a band get that many people passionate enough to go potentially sit out in the rain and see them? Now, for the past century, it's really easy to come up with 50 names that could have easily sold out giant stadiums, or at least smaller basketball stadiums, 20, 30,000 people, Carrier Dome, etc. Anything from the Beatles to Journey. I mean, the Journey Send Her My Love video is JFK Stadium in Philadelphia, 85,000 people, although the fade out of the end of the video is actually the Cotton Bowl. Most people don't know that. Sorry. Personally, your narrator here, Matt, I've seen Aerosmith and Michael Jackson, let it go. I've seen Aerosmith and Michael Jackson in full-sized outdoor football stadiums. Now, who could do that today? Let's just compare music in this segment of Stalled Century. Who could do that today? Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, the Jonas Twits. Even if the sports arena was able to fill up for some of them, like is the case kind of with Travis Scott, a musical genius, by the way. Travis Scott, the music that's in the stadiums, even though very few could fill them up, we'll just say, a few of them can. Objectively, the music is nothing more than unimaginative, repetitive retard beats. In the last century, even second-tier bands were better than anything that exists today. Second tier of the last century. Stalled musical century is just one example of 1,000 to indicate that's what's going on since 2001. It kind of relates kind of that date. What's been happening since then isn't normal. Listen to, go pull a second tier from the last century. The Cars. It's incredible right through the last song. George Michael Faith, is a great album that's considered kind of second tier. It's not the Beatles. Second tier was impressive. Today, what do we have? With the first tier today, the same slogans, the same hand signs, the same gestures, the same symbols, the same themes in every single video, especially rap and hip-hop. You've got to be kidding me. Pull a hip-hop video from 2004, just insert it in 20. It's the same thing. Just throwing money up in front of the McLaren with the gold chains. Give me a break. How original. Except each year, I guess getting closer to 2022 from the days of Back That Ass Up, it gets more unintelligible and stupid. I could do hours on this music thing, but it's so obvious that there's no good music today and there's an unnatural drop-off. It's so obvious, everybody but Snoop Dogg's 11 bastards know exactly what I'm talking about. In the stalled century, the same corporations stay put in the same pecking order at the top, kind of in the same way nobody ever challenged Moe and the Three Stooges. Why doesn't anybody or any of these corporations ever go out of business anymore? What? No other internet company in 20 years can challenge Facebook. No, that's just impossible. No, its rivals were conveniently put out of business, and then others were surrounded by stories of just bad business decisions, like News Corp buying MySpace. Then they just made bad business decisions. Oh, sure. A squirrel could have been handed the reins of MySpace in 2004, and it wouldn't be so bad for it as what happened with News Corp. Sure. What you saying, boy? that Facebook got some sort of illegal or illegitimate help to be where it is today? No, I would never suggest that. Oh, no. See, the CIA put forth a program to track every single email and track everybody's privacy. And there was some court battle or something. Oh, it was unconstitutional. And they shut it down. The CIA shut that down the day it was shut down, the very day Facebook popped up. I don't know what that program or whatever that Whopper computer thing was called, but it was shut down the day that Facebook. See, they have to tell you. So that's what happened. But I don't mean to get. I guess I'm already getting too conspiratorial. I've lost a few people that clicked in here, so F them. So it doesn't matter. Obviously, it's not just stalled century. the ones at the top, if they drop a little bit, it's just my feeling they probably get help to go back up there. But that's just me. The major brand offerings in stores never change in stalled century. I know there's a new kind of granola that pops up here and there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the major players at the top. Now, speaking to those listening under age 35, back in my day, there was actually something that seemed to be called competition. Like in school, they called it a capitalist democracy. And every once in a while, there was actually evidence of that if you looked out your window. I mean, some companies rose to the top for decades, but then they'd go away. And then others would go out of business and something else would come up. This is what happened for those under age 35. I'm not lying to you, man. This actually happened. Real manifestations of what they call capitalism. Where's that today? Things were changing rapidly in the old century compared to what's going on now in stalled century where nothing changes. See, back in the day, the Yugo, the Yugo came and went. Some piece of shit from Yugoslavia that didn't start if it was under 40 degrees. It came and it went. You know, then the fear of God was put into Ford and General Motors when something called the Honda Civic arrived in the early 70s. You know, that's what it was like. It really looked like capitalism and it felt like capitalism, even if it wasn't. Today, nothing happens. It's the same pecking order. The same mega companies coexist, like that stupid bumper sticker. It's almost like these companies got a hold of John Nash's bargaining theories on collusion as it was presented in the movie A Beautiful Mind, which he later won a Nobel Prize for. Would you say, boy, that these companies are colluding together so nobody ever ends up going out of business? Collusion, boy, is illegal under the Constitution. Oh, I know. I know. That would never happen today. The Constitution is stronger than ever, as I have to speak in code in half of my goddamn videos. Why has McDonald's painted all their restaurants like miniature gray Shawshank prisons? Think about it. You ever go to McDonald's today? Look at the picture of McDonald's from the 50s. Or early 60s, giant, colorful Ray Kroc arches just calling for you to pull off the highway to come enjoy our burgers. Beautiful yellow arches. It was a place that some would consider holding their wedding. McDonald's was a beautiful thing. Now it's painted like an old prison. McDonald's had a reputation in the other century, for those under the age 35 that have no recollection. They had a reputation for having extremely clean bathrooms. They were known for it. And they have the exact same standards of quality, no matter what country you visited your McDonald's in. So now it seems like while ordering your Big Mac, it seems like Andy Dufresne should be getting deloused in the line right next to us, throwing that white powder all over him. That's what it feels like going to that gray prison. Actually, one of the symptoms of stalled century, I mean, we have to name it something, stalled century, but a symptom is a constant de-evolution or devolution. I don't know if it's a word or not. I like it. It's a constant devolution across the board. There will never be a new Predator movie where you will go in and like, this is like being back in 1980, whatever, with Schwarzenegger in the jungle. That will never happen. You will never drive by a McDonald's where they decide to bring back the feel of the 1950s and it looks pleasant to go into. It will always do everything in stalled century. If it doesn't just flat out stall, it devolves. McDonald's will continue to devolve into something that ends up looking like Alcatraz. Interesting, in 2007 going into 2008, they cooked up this gigantic economic crash related to real estate and housing, but the big brands They didn't go anywhere. They weathered that storm. How'd that happen? And the billionaires, the more money, more problems billionaires, they got even more richer. How'd that happen? I don't know. Everything presented on the news is completely legitimate. The little guy lost his home, but the hedge funds just got more billions. That makes sense. Oh, I can hear somebody saying, throwing their bed sheets off, get your facts right, buddy. Don't you remember Countrywide went out of business during the banking economic crisis of 2008? And don't you understand that Morgan Stanley, or was it Merrill Lynch and the Bull, they were just days away from going under, and then the Fed forced other banks that were still solvent to take them over and buy them. Yeah, I'll give you that 20,000 good people who worked in the damn company lost their jobs. You show me the billionaires that were taken down. Like, I guess just incredibly coincidentally, Warren Buffett had no investments when Merrill Lynch went to $1, right? He just had it didn't affect him. What a coincidence. Show me the billionaires taken down, right? Every once in a while, I guess they have to make it look good. I get with Andy Fastow of Enron. I think he went to jail for like 5 years. Oh, well, and Ken Lay's dead. Every once in a while, I guess they have to take somebody down, and Countrywide probably did go out of business. But there was no the billionaires, many named billionaires, should have been majorly impacted, and they were not. Give me a break. Stalled century shows up or gives itself away in most facets of society and culture. For example, name one high-tech industry that doesn't improve for 50 years, just does nothing for 50 years. It wouldn't be around very long, right? It's impossible. Yeah, okay. But it doesn't end there. It doesn't just end with no improvement. In one case, the technology or the results got worse as the decades went on. One more example. What if Facebook back in 2005 looked kind of like it does today? Not quite as technologically advanced as it is today, but let's say Facebook had a similar look and feel back in 2005. But to use Facebook today in 2022 to create a post, you had to actually tie a little note to the leg of a carrier pigeon and send the damn pigeon out your window. Every time you do it, your neighbor takes out a shotgun and tries to shoot it. Now, that would be kind of strange if Facebook devolved that way. But we have incidences of things that are even worse than this, but nobody seems to notice or care. What am I talking about? The space program. No, I can't emphasize the main premise here enough, because nothing gives away stalled century like the space program. Every single industry, especially an industry in any way associated with technology, has moved forward exponentially, has moved up in progress exponentially since 1970, while the space program has it hasn't stalled, it's gone backwards. Backwards. But to keep the theme here, we'll just keep the same term, stalled. Now, what excuses are people pulling forth from their life script? What's script here are the normies running? I told you here, I have too many examples. So the excuses don't hold up anymore. Stalled century is real. A handheld battery-powered speaker. Okay, a speaker you could hold in your hand, battery-powered in 1970. You know what it sounded like? It sounded like some piece of shit Cracker Jack toy that was left out in the rain for 5 weeks. That's what a battery-powered handheld battery, not plug-in, there's a difference, battery-powered speaker sounded like. Today, they have these battery-powered Bluetooth speakers you can hold in your hand, and they're so incredible with the music that comes out, you could actually fool a caveman into thinking there's some sort of flea circus-type band that's actually playing inside the little box. He wouldn't understand the friggin' internet, so he would come around to believing you that there's some little band in there because the music is so clear. You can hear every instrument isolated from itself. The little handheld thing creates bass. Okay, that's one example. Like I had to give you an example of how progress moves forward. Now let's talk about the space program. Matt, you're breaking your own rules. You just talked about stalled century and progress in the same sentence. You forgot what I said coming in. I said in every single area but technology. See, technology shows what could happen across the board. They want the technology to progress. They want transhumanism. They want to put a chip in your brain. They're not going to hold that back. That's awfully conspiratorial. Well, yeah, it is. Time to wake up to how the world really works. I said not technology, not anything smart. But you can look at that, and everything across society and culture should be progressing in the same way. That's how it gives itself away. Everybody knows what's coming here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We'll just have a little fun with it. Apollo 11, 1969. Success! A successful mission to the moon on the first friggin' try. The first time I ever tried to do anything. Tie my shoes, I couldn't do it. First try. Went right to the moon. Incredible. First time I ever tried to throw a dart, I couldn't even hit the board. First try. Success. Number 12. Success. Again. Incredible. 13. Oh, Tom Hanks had to be sent home. 14, success. 15, success. 16, success. 7, incredible. So then we quote Elon Musk, where he had that very serious press conference about AI, and he said, assuming any level, or whatever, he was talking about virtual reality, or whatever that lone scum was talking about, said, assuming any level of progress at all going into the future, then soon virtual reality will be indistinguishable from real reality. The chances we live in base reality, 1 in a billion, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's just apply that to the space program. 1969, 1970, success, success, success. Matt runs up to Heather Locklear. Want to go out? Success. Matt runs up to Heather Thomas. Want to go out with me? Success. It's incredible. Assuming any level of progress at all, there should be huge colonies of people orbiting Saturn or Jupiter. I'm not going to... You understand my personal views on this. Let's stay to the point. There could be somebody from Skokie that picked this up. We don't want to turn them off. So what we have is nothing but this. Shiny, happy people laughing on the ISS. That's all we have. We have, go look up guy in a gorilla suit on the ISS. Go look up guy composes on music on the ISS. Go look up the ball that survived the Challenger accident taken to the ISS for some sort of a memorial service. Look that up. Go look this up. Pizza party on the ISS. Go look up how big-haired women wash their hair on the ISS. All we have is fun and games on the ISS. Naked Twister on the ISS. Even assuming there are a little pizza party floating around up there, that ain't progress. That's going backwards. No matter how much of you believe is real, it's still incredible evidence for a stalled century. Change the topic. Tell me about innovative and novel TV shows of this century that we all look forward to every week like we did in the last century. What's this century's Cheers or Seinfeld or All in the Family or The Jeffersons or MASH? What is the equivalent of that today? It doesn't exist again. Again? With us? It doesn't exist. It seems the entire stalled century has forgotten how to laugh. How does an absolute buffoon moron like Jimmy Kimmel have a job? Maybe you could see giving him a job, trying him out 15 years ago, but then after, say, the first 2 weeks, he'd be removed, never to see the television set again, or somebody yelling at me from either the bathtub and I'm introducing a new slogan, ripping their covers off. The guy that does, I don't care what his name is, don't even bother with the comment. His name's not even worth saying. It's like blasphemy, but, oh yeah, carpool karaoke or whatever that stupid stuff was. Oh, that's just the height of comedy. Yeah, who needs Cheers and Seinfeld when you have that jerk riding people around with carpool karaoke? That's the best this damn century can do. Pathetic and in the extreme. Jimmy Fallon on The Tonight Show. You know, we used to have not only consider people funny in the last century, but you would look at them with a degree of respect, like Johnny Carson. For some reason, he was funny, but also commanded a degree of respect, like an elder. And I guess the intermediate missing link buffoon was Jay Leno, but then you get Jimmy Fallon. I kid you not, for years, I could not distinguish between Jimmy Fallon and what's the guy's name? Mike Myers. I thought it was the same guy. Mike Myers. It's like I said that the same way the Shallow Hal, what is it, Jason Alexander says. Vicky? I thought it was a guy. I thought her name was Vic. But I didn't realize Mike Myers and Jimmy Fallon were different people. Every time I heard the Austin Powers jingle, I thought of Jimmy Fallon. I think, that's one Swedish-made penis pump. That's not my bag, baby. I thought it was Jimmy Fallon. Where are the great comedic movies of this century like Trading Places, Stripes, and Caddyshack? Why does MTV run 24 hours straight of 16 and Pregnant, but play music videos on other channels when the channel's called music television? Why not just keep that for the videos? So, stalled century, Matt. Confusing stalled century, absolutely. Why does Video Hits 1 show B movies and a lot of junk instead of Video Hits 1? What? At least I have 16 and Pregnant on both channels. Does this relate back in general to Music Sucks? There's not enough good stuff to run music channels too? Yeah. See, that relates back to, we were talking about a few minutes ago, how music sucks. Objectively, music sucks. So I'm not sure what the excuse makers would say about MTV. They'd say something, well, Matt, they needed to evolve, and you know how reality TV makes money for the large corporations, right? What? What does that even mean? Videos are still shown by channels that MTV owns, but they chose to put them on channels not called music television. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Why didn't they just keep music television for the music and name the other stations a degenerate teenager station? Okay, let's move on. But I can hear a defender of reality, a defender of the status quo, a defender of the system. Oh, they're going to tell me about Game of Thrones. Oh, yeah, 2011. Well, that's the new century, isn't it, Matt? That proves it's not stalled. Oh, yeah, one series. One series that was pretty darn good. Out of all the crap that's produced in this century, it's like the barbers in Coming to America 1. Like, every time you white people that talk about boxing, Rocky Marciano this, Rocky Marciano this. He beat Joe Louis's ass. He did whip his ass. Rocky Marciano, Game of Thrones. That's all you got from me. Game of Thrones. Like one decent series every 100 years. Oh, that disproves my whole stalled century theory. What was I thinking even making this presentation? It's like waiting behind a goose for a century, waiting for a golden egg to come out. Let's talk about the here and now. I got one TV show a year. I was going to say look forward to, but I record it, it comes on, and I watch it. It's so bad. I don't look forward to it. I'm like, oh, it recorded another Snowpiercer. I might as well watch that instead of watching Animal House for the millionth time or trying to break down another movie for Truth Drops. It's the only damn thing I watch. But even that, I think the lead actor I think he's actually Thomas Jefferson from Hamilton. He ain't that good. And you have a horrible overacting, the guy that played Ned Stark. I don't know, Ned Stark in Game of Thrones. He was also Boromir or Bor de Tears in The Lord of the Rings. He's Mr. Wilford, an obnoxious overacting Mr. Wilford running this train. I actually look forward to that. That tells you how bad it is. It's amazing I haven't hung myself. Transitioning from television to movies is actually the most disturbing aspect of all of Stalled Century. Not only can't the Stalled Century produce a new classic movie of any kind, it seems to work really hard at destroying the legacy of the past classic movies of the old century. Now, as I can't resist talking about how horrible the last 3 Star Wars movies are, I'm going to bring it into the Stalled Century presentation. There's no doubt, by any objective measure, the last 3 Star Wars are some of the worst movies ever made, or let's just go the whole way, the worst movies ever made if you consider all the factors that they had on their side that should have produced a very solid, if not great, work of art. So if somebody locked you into a room for 2 weeks and you were in some sort of Melbourne quarantine, and they told you all you had to work with in terms of producing a new Star Wars, I guarantee anybody listening to the sound of my voice could do better than what Ryan Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy were able to do. Anybody listening to my voice could do better in a Melbourne quarantine. Like Schwarzenegger from Pumping Iron. Book us into a room. If we booked you into a room just for maybe a few hours, you could storyboard it better than what these turds came up with. So here's what you have. Let's just play this out. There's no more fascinating thing in the world to me. Let's say you agree to do it. We'll put you at a Puerto Rican resort for a week, all expenses paid. Here's what you have to work with. And by the end of the week, we want to see what you've drawn up in terms of the new creative direction for Star Wars. But before agreeing to anything, you'd have a few questions for the Disney chairman of the board of directors, and the CEO before they put you completely in creative control of where Star Wars would go the next 20 years. What do I have to work with here? You know what I mean? Are you gonna kind of tie my hands? Oh, you have complete creative control. You have, number one, a $300 million budget to work with. Oh, wow, okay. Number two, you'll have access to all the classic characters. We're bringing back Harrison Ford. We're bringing back Carrie Fisher. Luke, Mark Hamill has agreed to come in. You can bring his character in when you think it's appropriate. He's doing nothing. He's just waiting at home, waiting for Corvette Summer 2 to start up again. He's in. You got the whole cast. Chewie. Of course, it don't matter. We don't know who's in that suit. So you got Chewie. You got animated characters. You got the whole gambit you can work with. Wow. Okay, I've got that. Number three, you could, if you ever have any say writer's block, okay, I know you're a person that's never ever created a storyboard before in your life as you hang out, try to figure out what to do with Star Wars in the Puerto Rican resort. Here's the number for 500 other creative geniuses that are at Disney. These are people that produced our top-selling Pixar movies, our top Marvel and animated movies. Here's the guy that wrote Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid. Here's the number for the guy that created the caterpillar character in A Bug's Life. I'm a beautiful butterfly. It's the same guy that does Yoda's voice. But here's all the numbers in case you need to call them for some kind of unblock your writer's block. And then on top of that, we're going to introduce new characters. And if you want to rename them, you can rename them. We came up with Poe, Ren, and Finn. What about 2 syllables? If you want to do it, again, you got complete control. If you want to do 2 syllables, go for it. There's going to be new actors. And, well, who can I pick to be Poe or Finn? Any actor that exists in the world. Because we're going to pay them $20 million, and who wouldn't want to be part of the new Star Wars and history going forward? You can pick anybody except Alec Baldwin. Guys, could you imagine Alec Baldwin as Finn? the stormtrooper helmet comes off, and it's Alec Baldwin, like 40 pounds overweight. Sorry. Guys, the point here is very simple. You could get anybody that can finish a bowl of soup, put them in a room for a few hours, and they could do better than what Rian Johnson and Jar Jar Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy did. Therefore, what they did is obviously all by design. You could go find old comic books from the 50s that you think people have forgotten about and just steal the themes from old comic books, and it would have been better. So I love the exercise, and I can't wait to do a full Star Wars Made Bad on Purpose video coming up in the future. Okay, moving on. It's not just stalled. The new century seeks to destroy all that was great in the old century. And it's not just about Star Wars. I mean, there's a lot of this going on across the board in multiple franchises, and it wields a deadly new Death Star weapon in terms of its ability to destroy in the new century. If it needed help in the destruction, the new Death Star weapon that's just guaranteed to piss people off is a silver bullet to be bad called woke agendas, social justice warrior themes, and endless diversity pushing that nobody wants. Nobody wants. I mean, who could believe the amount of social justice warrior agendas, woke agendas, and diversity pushing, the amount of it that comes through movies today? Who could possibly believe that this is the best Hollywood can do? I mean, obviously, without getting too conspiratorial, something else is going on. We'll leave to another discussion. But it's not what you think it is. I mean, do I have to continue making the argument? It would be so nice if a presentation like this could get out to a few people other than the people that are already convinced of it. The latest Terminator movie was bad, and it hurt and impacted the entire franchise. Again, I call forth Jason Alexander from Shallow Hal, the modified individual that battled the Terminator. I thought it was a guy. I called her Vic. It was Vicky, and they had to insert that. The agendas we just talked about. Yeah. So then they brought back the He-Man. It's called He-Man, Master of the Universe. The main character is He-Man. That they removed him. He-Man no longer has He-Man. Well, he was in it for like a half an episode, but then he was replaced with a woman who has gigantic pumping iron Schwarzenegger-like biceps who likes to boss around Rachel Maddow. The latest Star Trek series, Star Trek Discovery, in many ways jeopardized the entire legacy of Star Trek. The Klingon protagonist, no, he's the antagonist, sorry. The Klingon, to me, he was the protagonist. I wish he would have taken out the entire Discovery, but he's presented as the antagonist. He tortures people in new, horrible ways. He's white. They actually present him as an albino Klingon. I wonder why. I don't know. Can't say anymore. Now, that's a first in Star Trek. An albino Klingon. I don't know why they present it like that. I have a few theories, but we'll just continue. The new Aliens versus Predators movies are abominations to the original Jungle movie with Governor Schwarzenegger and Governor Ventura. 2 U.S. state governors in a movie about hunting an alien. And politics is completely real, but that's for another video. Prometheus, basically, really, it has roots and ties to the original Alien, so that, in a more indirect way, takes down Alien. Like the new Mulan destroys the old Mulan. Fantastically Bad Beasts destroys Harry Potter. They bring forth this movie called The Imitation Game that focuses just as much on his orientation as it does the decoding the enigma that supposedly won World War II. See, one is just as important as the other. I have no doubt if they ever do another movie about the Founding Fathers, if they ever do another movie like The Patriot of any kind, what do you think's going to happen? They're going to bring all those named people in. They're going to hint. They're going to provide at least a few clues that one of them is, not that there's anything wrong with that. In the mid-'70s, it was a big deal for kids. Greg and I talk about this all the time, for kids to go see the new James Bond movie. I mean, for people around age 50, Roger Moore was James Bond. That's just what we grew up with. But, even Pierce Brosnan did a decent job, carrying forth the legacy. I wouldn't put him in there, and I can't complain that he's soft. If I like the Roger Moore James Bond, he's as wimpish and soft as it gets, I guess. But I'd rather see somebody like Pierce Brosnan stick to things like Mrs. Doubtfire. But it's okay. Roger Craig, what is his name? Roger Craig, Daniel Craig. Roger Craig was a running back. It doesn't matter. Horrible, absolutely horrible. They brought this guy. But now at least, what have they done? Can I even say? I'll just say, you know what 007 is today? It ain't even a man. Vicky. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. The new century stalls or destroys wherever it can. Back to TV for a moment. Per the absolute definition of stalled century, nothing ever changes at all in many media presentations. And who knows how long. Maybe they'll take it past 2050. It's the same hosts, the same actors, the same themes, the same game shows, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune. I think I went by... Rung and the Restless is still on. I flipped by that the other day, and I think Greg or somebody told me that Nikki and Victor are still on it. Are they still alive? Are they doing a Weekends with Bernie thing for the Young and the Restless? I couldn't believe it. It's the same soaps, the same themes, but let's just look at Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. Surpassed 36 seasons, 3 sixes. One of them was taken out, I think, in the 36th season. 36 seasons. I remember watching this shit as a kid in high school. I didn't watch it. My mother watched Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, tried to answer the questions. I remember it being on in our apartment, in Kingswood Apartments in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. I'm over 50. I remember this in high school. How is that possible? It takes an actual death on the set to change the show up a little bit. Was Alex Trebek, whatever? Was his last breath a Final Jeopardy question? Maybe he's back into a body already. Did he Saturn Moon Matrix recycle back into a body in some form of reincarnation because to the Archon that presented itself before him, he did not answer the question in a form of a question? Oh, you didn't phrase it in the form of a question, Alec. You should know better after 40 years. Back into a body for you, this time in the slums of Delhi. I flipped by CNBC the other day, and that loser Kramer is still there. I couldn't believe it. Kramer, what? He was telling people to load up on stocks right before the 2007-2008 crash. He's been there. It might be over 20 years. It's the same pathetic booyah act. It's the same act for 20 years. How can people take it? We can't, real people like me and you can't take the stalled century. Make it stop. Make it stop. That little obnoxious man, that Kramer, he's so likable that the CNBC stock show in that time slot couldn't be hosted by anybody else. Nobody else in the world could come over. He's so beloved. No, he's not. Stalled century, the ability to just cast the same things in the same ways over and over and over again in this reality takes precedence over what people want. And all the excuse in the world doesn't work. Oh no, he's no. In 20-some years, you could find other hosts that would be better than that obnoxious little man. I ain't buying it. Decade after decade, it's the same old Simpsons. It's the same old South Park. It's the same old SpongeBob. In the old century, even when something was pretty darn good, it just kind of went away after 5, 6, or 7 years. I assure you, nothing in the 80s, in the early 80s or mid-80s, whenever it was, nothing for young boys or young men was bigger than the A-Team. The A-Team was huge. Everybody tuned into it. You looked forward to it. All right? It went away after a limited number of seasons. And that's the A-Team, man. It's not SpongeBob or this bullshit they recycled decade after decade. The Family Guy, how many decades is that going to go on? It doesn't end. If the A-Team came out in this century and then the stalled would have to apply to it, it would never go off the air. You'd have Mr. T and whatever that actor's name, Face. You'd have the old Mr. T and the old Face, the guy from Battlestar Galactica. You'd have him rolling around in wheelchairs, where each arm of the wheelchair, you lift up the end, is like a machine gun. Across the board, the stalled century cannot create. All it can do is recycle. So the list of what it's recycled in terms of television, we'll start with that, is just off the charts. So Magnum Pi, let's bring it back. Magnum Pi. It doesn't have Tom Selleck, though. It has some actor that is completely forgettable, so it becomes bad. I mean, how are you going to replace Tom Selleck was very, very good if you're an old person like me in that iconic role. So MacGyver, wasn't for me in the old century, but bring it back. Do a new Star Trek. Well, Matt, there's been many Star Trek franchises. Okay, well, instead of sticking to the canon of Star Trek, put in a relationship in Star Trek. That's not that there's anything wrong with it. The one relationship in the new Star Trek is not that there's anything wrong with it. Well, there is kind of, if you want to keep the okay. Will this load? Bring back Roseanne without Roseanne. What's it called? The Connors. Bring back Battlestar Galactica, but ruin it. They brought back Saved by the Bell with that idiot that's done the entertainment shows or whatever. He's ageless. Who knows what's in his red wine. He doesn't seem to age, that guy. They should have put him back as a high school kid like Jump Street, 21 Jump Street, not a teacher. He could fit right in with Screech or whatever. Put him back as a kid. They're working right now, drum roll, they're working on a new Fresh Prince. I'm not sure if Will Smith's going to be in it or not. It's just going to be called Bel-Air, based on the new generation of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. They're going to have that same dummy geek doing his bad dancing. How are they going to carry that forth? Walker Texas Ranger is returning or has returned. The Wonder Years has returned, but you have to change the race, of course. A female reboot of Doogie Howser is coming soon. Northern Exposure is coming back. A new Frasier. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do a Weekend with Bernie's with Kelsey Grammer, how that's going to work. A new Frasier. Isn't he like he's 147 years old? A new Frasier's in the works. Double confirmed. 2 different websites. Hawaii Five-0. Hawaii Five-0 is rebooted. But why not just call it something completely different? Because the people watching it have no memory. I mean, some older people, but in terms of the who it was targeting, they don't remember Hawaii Five-0 from the early to mid-'70s. Are you kidding me? Dynasty. Dallas. Oh, Dallas. Me and my grandmother watched Dallas, and then we watched Dynasty right after with Joan Collins, who was like 180 years old during Dynasty. That's rebooted. Believe it or not, Night Court is coming back. Marky, not Milk Reality, Marky Post is dead. Leave it alone. They're rebooting, at least for a limited series, 90120. I mean, we should have. I'd tune into it if like the original cast of 7 shiny happy people, like 3 are in jail, 2 have botched cosmetic surgeries, 1 is running a hardware store. I'd tune in for that, but I don't know what it's about, and I'm not going to tune in. So is there anything new that stands out in this century that's really good, other than the wonderful Snowpiercer? The answer is no. It's stalled century. The same cast of characters on the world stage never changes in stalled century. Think of this. About 99% of the world's the entire population of the world, their entire lives, all they've ever known is Queen Elizabeth on the throne. They've never known anything else. You hear stories of who was before that, King James or George, but it's all we know is Elizabeth. And you wonder if she'll ever leave. I'm not joking. How many years can they push that? I mean, characters like Warren Buffett, in the world stage, they just hang around decade after decade after decade. I know people that have had 5 dogs, own potentially 7 cars, owned and leased since Warren Buffett's been doing CNBC interviews with Becky Quick. It's the same thing over and over again. It's like, aren't you like 180 years old? Don't you just want to step down and do what Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson did in the Bucko? Go sit on the Great Pyramid or something, dude? Well, Matt, they live on they thrive on power and money. Well, yes, to a degree, but they're also running a script for the Not Nook reality. They're not allowed to leave, but that's for another conversation. I've already driven off anybody that stumbled upon this. Might as well get conspiratorial. In the stalled century, it seems no one can step away from their script or the cue cards that are handed to them. Does it seem that way? Buffett, Gates, Lunch Buffet, Zuck the Borg, Bezos. I don't care who steps down officially. They don't ever go away. Don't tell me about Bezos. It's always the same cast of characters. Old presidents like Jimmy Carter never die. It's the same thing. It's Home Depot and Lowe's forever. Home Depot and Lowe's in the century. Does anybody get the sense that there's ever going to be an option, a major competitor that comes up other than Home Depot and Lowe's? What does your gut tell you? What does your intuitive side tell you? Jerry Maguire, what does your heart tell you? Matt, it tells me it's only going to be Home Depot and Lowe's forever and ever. And see, they're running the John Nash collusion game theory script as well. Of course they are. Many years ago, there's no real competition. Home Depot got together with Lowe's, probably as Congress and the Senate made it legal, probably, and they said, look, let's just help each other. I have a chance of putting you out of business. You have a chance of putting me out of business. We don't want that. Slash prices. We all can get rich together and make it look like competition. See, that's kind of what's going on, but we'll leave the John Nash game theory, collusion, that's why he won the Nobel Prize, of course. We'll leave that for some other time, and so we've already talked about it. So we get a sense there will always just be Home Depot and Lowe's, but we get a sense of that in a lot of different areas in the stalled century. Personal story. Let me take you, right about now, I'm going to take you back in time. The last century in a place called Norristown, Pennsylvania, which, I haven't been back there in about 20 years. It was all right. Lived there for about 5 years. There's a place called Heckinger's, right by Plymouth Meeting, if you know that. A place called Heckinger's. It was put out of business by, I believe, Home Depot and Lowe's. Just like that's how businesses operated. Sometimes they come up and they go down. That's what happened in the old century. I still have a wooden sawhorse right here in the house. It says Heckinger's, and it says right at the tagline underneath. I'm not kidding you. It's not a joke. Made in Canada for our American friends. I'll have that as the picture of this video. See, then it just went away because in the last century, things were allowed to go out of business. It was the capitalism was crony capitalism, but it was more natural, more normal than what it is today. I worked at Silo Electronics, S-I-L-O, Electronics, right out of Penn State. There was some kind of recession, so 8-semester dean's list got me a assistant manager job working the worst shifts every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm working Silo Electronics, and all my friends are out partying. It was the worst thing of all time. But they eventually went out of business. Circuit City put them out of business. And then Best Buy put Circuit City out of business. But in this century, it's the same Home Depot and Lowe's. It's Best Buy forever and Amazon forever. It's like Best Buy, when they came into the new century in a certain dominant position, they kind of cemented their position, and the stalled century will never let them go away. I mean, does anybody ever think that there will be big shakeups in the corporate names that you know? What does your heart tell you? No, it's not. Every once in a while, they'll drop somebody off. They'll at some point have to make it look like real capitalism, but it's not. It's so obviously not. It's not 31 flavors of competition. It's one, and it's the one they tell you to swallow. Play performances, another form of art, is a great way to compare and contrast real life, or closest thing they gave us to real life in the last century, with the stalled century. Let's look at plays. The big one in the last century was Phantom of the Opera. Now today, we have Hamilton. Let's compare and contrast. Now, objectively, I didn't say subjectively, objectively, there is no comparison in quality between Phantom of the Opera, musically, the singing, no way to compare them. One is an absolute turd compared to the other. And I know somebody's throwing back their covers right now and they yell at me. You can't use the word objective when it comes to art and music. You can't use objective in your conversation. Oh, sorry. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. There are objective standards to art and music. I can prove it in 2 seconds. You know, the celloist, the famous celloist, Yo-Yo Ma, you know, do you think that that's better if Yo-Yo Ma sits down and plays the theme from Crouching Tiger, Hide the Dragon? Do you think that would be better than, say, a kid that's been playing for 4 or 5 days in their first cello lessons in 2nd grade? Do you think one would be or is it like you can't just say objectively one's better than the other? There could be somebody somewhere in the world that likes that screeching sound of the 2nd grader better than Yo-Yo Mama. The 2nd grader sounds like the Nessie creature from Loch Ness being castrated on a fishing boat, but I can't use the word objective because somebody in the world might like that better. Sorry, I can use objective. The White Album, the Beatles' White Album, or pick one that you like, Sgt. Pepper's, whatever. Every time I use the White Album, someone's like, that sucks, Matt. That sucks. Okay, Sgt. Pepper's, whatever. There are some Beatles albums that some people consider good. Is that better, say, than a gorilla? If I recorded a gorilla banging coconuts together under a palm tree, you see, one is better than the other. You can use the word objective. Last example, like there needs to be one. Remember when American Idol came, when it was actually pretty good, 2001, 2, 3, 4, before they ruined that? You had those, the first few American Idols we'd watch because of the bad singing, the funny outtakes. Was it Richard Hung or something? Shebang, shebang. Yeah, it was horrible, right? So there are objective standards, or we wouldn't be laughing at those people, but you can't do that anymore. It's very insensitive, and that's just not accepted in the new century. But it was pretty funny to watch 2003, 4, whenever they did that stuff. There were some really horrible performances, and when it was really funny is or Simon would say how horrible it was, and it was horrible. Go watch some of the old ones on YouTube. It is funny, but they can't understand it. The people singing go, well, everybody tells me I'm wonderful. They can't understand how bad they are. That's what makes it so funny. But yes, there are objective standards. Those people, they just don't hold up to the person that won American Idol, and Lin-Manuel Miranda, who can't rap. He can't dance. What's that song? I can't dance. I can't sing. Who sings that? That should be one of the songs they insert into Hamilton. Lin-Manuel Miranda can't rap, can't dance, can't sing. He can't hold up to Sarah Brightman in Phantom of the Opera. Stalled century extends into geopolitics, getting into Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's in this century, so it has to stall out. They have to basically be in there forever. Endless bullcrap, endless meddling. For both countries, if you combine them, it pushed over 40 years, if you add it all up. Over 40 years. Patton fought Hitler for about 1.5 years. Then he went home. Then they have to do more stuff. Play both sides by making sure there's a continuous bogeyman that's called, can I even say this stuff? It's called when Bill Clinton said, depends what the definition of is. That's the bogeyman that they kept bringing forth, because then you have to keep pushing that so you can stay in these Middle Eastern countries forever and ever and ever and ever, installed century. So has anybody at this point ripped their bed sheets off, wishing to inform me that they'll say we are out of Afghanistan by now? Oh yeah, I'm aware of that. After almost 21 years, so yeah, that's right. They're going to stay in there for 100 years. At some point, they have to make it look real. At some point, they have to get out. I mean, did anybody think they'd be there till 2060? At some point, they want to stall it out in every area forever and ever, but at some point it would give itself away, even to the lowest and dumbest of normies. So yes, they had to get out. But they pushed that as long as they could. They'll stall everything out as long as they can. Let's talk about medical stalled century. I don't really have firsthand knowledge of anything being cured or anything, but I heard from my grandparents and people in the last centuries that some stuff got better in terms of medicine. There were certain types of antibiotics that help people in certain areas. There's things like smallpox that went away. There were some decent things that help people to a degree compared to the complete stalled out century. In this century, nothing happens. There are no cures across the board. Nothing, but they have all this technology. You're holding in your hand an iPhone 11 that has 40 million times the computing power of what Neil and Buzz took to the moon. They've mapped the human genome, but they can't figure out to cure anything. And sure, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that adds up as being completely legitimate. And then when something comes that's like somewhat normal, like a flu, or that doesn't go away, so it's worse. It's not just stalled, it's worse, but they have all these incredible new drugs that deal with all these different ailments and illnesses and make those ailments and illnesses manageable. But none of those companies that ever put those drugs together, like Nocresto or Wallalesto, they can never cure anything. Isn't that interesting? No cures to any major diseases. I mean, you could reenact, I'm not going to do it, the scene from Point Break. They've produced squat. It's not normal, folks. It's not natural. It's just more stalled century evidence. And stalled century, it's not just the reality. In many cases, it stalls because of the devious plotting and planning of people that don't want to cure anybody because they can't. A cure doesn't pay any good money, or a dead person doesn't pay any good money. They only pay good money if they suffer for 20-some years with whatever disease that the drug is trying to manage. I'm aware of all that. It's not just people plotting and planning either. There's something with reality itself that stalls itself out in every area, and we'll reward people handsomely if you participate in its stall-out plans. Now, the definition of stalled century, when something is still expected to be still in society and still in culture through 2022, it's not like it's just stalled. It's still expected to be here like the post office. Stalled century themes mean that the service gets worse. And I'm not just talking about the post office. Whatever is still expected to be here will devolve or get worse. The post office is still delivering letters. That's expected. But a stalled century symptom is all sorts of problems and issues. And in 2020, I had a relative that got a few cards on 2 different holidays that took over 6 weeks to arrive. And then the excuse makers are saying, aren't you aware there's a global pandemic? Oh, yeah, okay. This year, Pam got Christmas cards from her best friend. They arrived on January 20th or 21st or something like that. Christmas cards arrived almost in the last week of January. And this was not the post office's fault. He says, well, she bought these cards and then they couldn't get supplies because of the global, but you know what? They couldn't get the supplies, so the damn cards people bought showed up 2 weeks after Christmas, and then they had to be sent out, so they arrived basically the last week in January. They just got them. And fine, the excuse makers will blame the pandemic, but you can't have a viable excuse. In this case, supply shortages would potentially be a viable excuse. You can't do that across the board in this presentation. Let's just forget that example, go on to another one. The big companies, nothing ever improves in terms of some of the basic services they present. It either gets worse or it stalls out. You call a company, I've said this 100 times, whether it be your cell phone company or whatever, we are experiencing longer than expected wait times. They all have to use the exact same verbiage. We are experiencing longer than expected wait times. So if you're dumb enough to stay on the line, so this happens over and over and over again. And, if it happened for a short period of time, then it's because these companies make billions. They should have probably fixed it in 4 to 6 weeks. It just happens decade after decade. And like I've said many times, I'm not calling the damn toy company on Christmas Eve trying to get a Turbo Man. I mean, I expect if I'm trying to get a Turbo Man on Christmas Eve, there are going to be a lot of mothers and fathers trying to get the damn final Turbo Man, like Schwarzenegger trying to run around, get that damn doll for his kid. I'm talking about just calling any old big company, calling Verizon, my cell phone provider, in the middle of July. Oh, we're expecting longer than expected wait times. I said it again. We're experiencing. Why? Well, if you could talk to it like Siri and it had to reply with truth, and you just happen to run that, you put a code in, like a cheat code in a video game where it had to deliver truth, it would say, because we always have to facilitate stalled century. That is what this new reality is. It has been moved off to the side into the abyss and into the interface. The principle or metaphysics of stalled century won't allow anything to really be fixed. It won't allow new things and new processes that affect a human being's life in a meaningful, positive way. It will stall or it will degrade. That is obviously what's going on here, and it gets awfully conspiratorial diving into why it's going on, but it doesn't matter how conspiratorial we get, because nobody can say the evidence that is lining up here as I presented across the board doesn't point to something very strange is going on, how nothing improves and everything gets worse and everything stalls out. We have enough evidence now. It doesn't matter if we want to get conspiratorial in the reason for it, which we'll talk about some other time. Nobody can deny this. I mean, I've talked even with some relatives, and they're starting to come around like, yeah, what is going on here? Nothing is ever fixed. It's the same old patterns and scripts over and over again. Yeah, even the normies are starting to kind of throw water in their own face and see what the hell's going on, if you can believe that. I've mentioned I have a relatively new Mac now from 2021, a new iMac. Now, it is in every area far worse than my Mac from 2009. It's so bad, and I don't trust the GarageBand. I'm recording this on the old Mac from 2009. I've done 40-minute recordings, 50-minute recordings, where 50 minutes into it, it all turns to gibberish. Just I don't trust it, and I will, for a voice recording like that, I'll convert into MP3. I'm always going to use the old Mac that's completely reliable. Now, they had 12 years almost to sit around and make it worse. Now, nobody sat around for 12 years trying to make it worse. It's a symptom of reality itself. But how is this possible? The new Mac, every microphone I use, you should just plug it in. It should work. I'm not joking. I plug in the microphone, this Samsung microphone I have here, that the first time I ever plugged it into the old Mac, it was about 7 or 8 years more advanced than the old Mac. The old Mac just saw it. Oh, new microphone. Here you go. It worked. I plug it in to iMovie and GarageBand. In the new Mac, complete, there's nothing there. You can hear, when I'll say testing 1, 2, 3, here's what it sounds like. It's a mess. Now, you know how I figured out how to fix it, at least for this microphone? It took me weeks. You just pull the end out of the microphone and you plug it back in. And it's fixed. It's clear. It took me weeks to figure out that. So I have to come up with little fixes for the new Mac that should work perfectly. Where the old Mac, the old tank just keeps going. Another symptom of stalled century. You better believe it. I have a relatively new laptop that's now not quite 3 years old. Every 2 or 3 or 4 times I use it, it happens quite a bit. I'll be listening to a YouTube video or whatever, and the sound will just stop. It'll just stop. I can hear see the person moving its mouth, but I don't hear anything. Now, I can either reboot or I have to plug in my headset that I'm using now. But it just stops, just cuts out. I've had no computer going back to 1995 that just the audio just stopped working. It didn't happen. The old shit is better than the new shit. There are refrigerators and appliances that are thousands of refrigerators and appliances are still running from the mid and late 70s. Thousands across the United States. You've seen the old white ones. They just have they have the big silver handle. They'll just run and run and run. The Freon, as long as the Freon stays intact, it's a closed system. They'll just run and run. So they can, in the 70s, they can make a refrigerator that lasts almost 50 years, but the new refrigerators, they last about 5 years or 7 years, or 5 years is when the repair people have to just check the warranty and all that stuff, and the ice maker goes and all that bullshit. And I know that somebody's ripping off their covers and they're saying, Matt, that's just they have to reach a Chinese price point. Everything's made on an assembly line in China, and it's all about quarterly profits and results. Okay, I know I'm straying a bit with this example off stalled century. I'll get back to the main point. I know they're just trying to reach a Chinese price point. The main talk show and TV hosts never go away in stalled century. I see recently, I just come across it, and it was a scary experience, that Lawrence O'Donnell of MSNBC, my friend Lawrence O'Donnell, he's still on somehow. See, it doesn't matter about talent anymore. Stalled century, it has to keep these ghouls in their show. It has to stall out across the board. And these ghouls that really are not very good, they're benefiting from the reality having to present itself as stalled. I'm pretty sure, I haven't looked, but Rachel Maddow, I'm sure, is still on. Hannity is still on. Back to Lawrence O'Donnell. He was a useless ghoul 20 years ago. and he's still on. In any normal world, he would have lost his job in a matter of days. Rush Limbaugh had to die to leave the air. They couldn't. They tried to do, I think, when they brought Tupac and Elvis back as a hologram. They tried to do that with Rush Limbaugh, kind of like a very high-tech Weekend at Bernie's. It didn't work, so they had to get rid of him. But you have to die off because the stalled century is so forceful in its scripts. You can never be broken. You have to die off like Alex Trebek for anything to ever change. You kind of mentioned Kramer, but is there anything more pathetic than that Kramer? He's like cringeworthy now. I mean, hopefully one day he'll do himself in, embarrass himself, and every single stock question he'll just yell out Fisher Price, like that phone that I got. Every single stock question about the way tech sectors are moving and the oil industry, he'll yell out the same answer every time. Fisher Price, booyah. And maybe it'll be a complete, they'll have to remove him at that point. I hope he does something like that. I don't watch it, but even just when I flip by it, it bothers me. Now, one area that breaks the trend a little bit is the hosts of the world news. The people haven't been there 50 years, and it's amazing they haven't tried to revive the body of Walter Cronkite or something, or Peter Jennings. They have the Plastic Man, the greasy-haired Plastic Man on CBS or ABC3, David Muir. They have, Nora O'Donnell? I mean, I guess she's only been there about 7 or 8 years. I mean, she cannot graduate into a bigger ghoul, but it's not like they've been there forever. So at least, I don't even know, is it Lester Holt that's still on the other channel? I don't know, but that's somewhat normal. It's not a glaring, absurd example that I can use for stalled century. However, my local 6 ABC Action News guy is a glaring, ridiculous, over-the-top example for stalled century. His name's, for those around the Philly area, Jim Gardner. Jim Gardner, I watched it. I stumbled upon it, or I was looking to get – I used to get the weather on like NBC or CBS. Is it going to snow, whatever. Now, if I miss that, I know Action News ABC 6 in Philadelphia has the weather on last. So I can go on that's what I did. I went on over to ABC and I caught the weather because I was late coming in on the half hour. And there's Jim Gardner. He's still there. Now, guys – my earliest childhood memories from Kingswood Apartments in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. I mean, before high school, like junior high, he was there. He might have been there when I was in elementary school. The earliest childhood memories living in this apartment building when I was a kid, it was the same guy, Jim Gardner. Now, how is that possible? It's likely, I walked by. My mom was watching Jim Gardner. I walked by. Where are you going? So, I'm going to study. I was going to get intimate with my new Farrah Fawcett poster. Jim Gardner, the same guy, was on. That's stalled century. That's a characteristic of stalled century. It's a metaphysical phenomenon of which we don't truly understand, but the evidence is off the charts. In terms of people that are powerful in business, like we touched on earlier, but almost nobody steps down. Nobody steps down and checks out or saying, I'm going off to retire. And when they do, again, don't tell me about Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates. Give me a break. Oh, Bill Gates is stepping down or whatever, and we're going to put Steve Ballmer in to make him worth $40 or $50 billion or whatever. We need to make him worth $50 billion. Bill Gates, did he go away to design golf courses or to paint? No, he was. I don't care what his title changed to. He was right there, involved. It's no different than Vladimir Putin. Oh, he's not going to be president. He put in this puppet Medvedev, whatever. He was no president. But what are we going to do, Medvedev? He called Putin. Vladimir, what should I do? He didn't step down. They don't step down. I don't care what they say they're doing. They'll still hang around. If anything were real, they would go do what Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman did in The Bucket List. Go sit on the Great Pyramid. Go do shit. Just get out of the public eye. They don't. So the official announcements, something Bezos, he put somebody in Amazon. Oh, he's not going to be involved. He's just going to try to get that hot water heater up in space. No, they don't ever step down. They don't ever leave the public eye. Another symptom of stalled century. How many do we have at this point? Do you ever get the sense, what does your heart tell you? What does your intuition, your inner knowing, your inner tuning for tell you? That 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, there'll be an announcement from Zuck the Borg. Zuck the Borg has a big announcement, And he'll say maybe he wants to do just a grilling show. Remember when he did the grilling with Sweet Baby Ray? Sweet Baby Ray's. He kept talking about Sweet Baby Ray's, like Facebook, and he's worth $45 or $50 billion. He needs the endorsement. Somebody in the truth community tried to tell me they're getting an endorsement money from that. Oh, yeah, sure. If he lost that Sweet Baby Ray's contract, the whole of Facebook would go under. That was some sort of humiliation ritual. We'll talk about that some other time. I don't truly understand it, but that's not appropriate here. You ever get the sense he's just going to check out? And if he says I'm no longer going to be CEO, just like I said in the last segment, he'll still hang around. He will never check out once he's been installed under the dragon's wing, and then it's a script. They can never go away. Zuck the Borg will be with us for the remainder, unfortunately, for the remainder of our natural lives. How about the themes that keep recycling around and around again, like the Blucifer carousel in the stalled century, like zombies, vampires, zombies, what is it? Walking Dead. How many seasons? I don't know, guys. Again, at this point, I'm just trying to wrap this video up. I researched most of it, but I'm kind of going on the fly at this point just to try to wrap it up. But there's some more things I wanted to say, like the endless themes, zombies, Fear the Walking Dead, 2 other spinoffs, 20-some seasons of The Walking Dead or spinoffs. It's, there's like 5 people watching. It's not that good. Vampires, the theme over and over and over again, because it has that. It's never getting into truth drops. It's a little bit different than Stalled Century. The vampire theme has to present itself because it's basically an indication of the way this whole reality sucks energy from real souls and spirits. But we're crossing into truth drop material, but it's still somewhat Stalled Century. Same themes. That's the one thing I wanted to close with. Well, I did remember something I wanted to talk about that I missed. The Price is Right. 1956 was the first episode of The Price is Right. Now, I think in some of the research guys, it was off the air for a little while. It wasn't continuous since 1956. And Drew Carey supposedly still is the host since 2007. He'll have to Alex Trebek out of there, or they won't be allowed to step down either per the rules of the Stalled Century. But what happens when The Price is Right, when it pushes 100 years, 100 years of people, you're the next contestant on The Price, come on down. That's right. Come on down. Guys, there's only one reason for it to hang on this long. Maybe The Price is Right is a little different than Stalled Century. It's a gigantic metaphor for reality itself and what they have warped reality and people's lives into. Come on down as a contestant in this life game. Hey, souls and spirits, come on down. And then it just feeds you with nonsense and spinning of wheels and a new car and stuff that just doesn't matter. The Price is Right will never go away, because it's a gigantic truth drop. And now we're crossing over again into why truth needs to show up in game shows and movies and music, and that's why The Price is Right it will always be around. It's a little bit different than Stalled Century, but I certainly couldn't end this presentation without talking about The Price is Right. Thanks, guys. Oh, Free Voice, definitely trying for finishing up what I'm working on for freevoice.io tomorrow, but it might be tomorrow afternoon or late evening, which would be Monday for our friends in Melbourne lockdown. Bye.